In the glittering but perilous court of Queen Elizabeth I, young lady-in-waiting Anne Marwood hides a deadly secret, a dagger meant for the Queen herself. Torn between duty, deception, and forbidden love, Anne must navigate a maze of betrayal, spies, and shifting alliances. As plots thicken and loyalties blur, she must decide whether to become the blade that ends a reign or the hand that saves it. The Dagger of Queens, where power cuts deeper than steel.
The heavy oak doors of Whitehall Palace swung open before Anne Marwood, and a rush of cold, stone-scented air washed over her. Her heart fluttered like a captive bird, caught between excitement and dread. She stepped inside, her delicate slippers muffling the echo on the polished flagstones, eyes wide with the solemn grandeur of the Tudor court. The air was thick with the mingled scents of burning tallow, lavender, and aged wood, a perfume both ancient and alive with whispered history. Anna's dark hair was neatly tied back, strands carefully pinned to frame her composed, pale face. Yet beneath the calm exterior, a tempest brewed beneath her skirts, concealed by layers of fine silk and embroidered hems, lay the dagger. Its cold steel blade was hidden from view, but its weight pressed heavy against her, a constant reminder of the peril she bore. The court was a tapestry of color and sound. Ladies in gowns of deep crimson and emerald green fluttered about like exotic birds, their laughter sharp as the clink of jewelry. Gentlemen in doublets of velvet and brocade whispered in shadowed alcoves, eyes darting with suspicion and ambition. Anne sensed the undercurrents swirling beneath the polished veneer, the subtle rivalries, the veiled threats, the games played with smiles as sharp as any blade. Her first steps took her to the Queen's private chambers, where the air seemed charged with a different energy altogether. There, seated upon her throne-like chair, was Queen Elizabeth I herself. The monarch's fiery red hair shimmered like a halo in the dim candlelight, and her gaze was as piercing as the blade Anne carried. Elizabeth's eyes met Anne's with the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. In that moment, Anne felt both the Queen's formidable presence and the crushing responsibility that came with serving her. A silent vow took root in Anne's heart to protect this woman, no matter the cost. Later, in a shadowed corridor lined with tapestries depicting battles and triumphs, Anne met Lady Margaret Seymour. The older courtier's silver-streaked hair caught the flickering candlelight, and her piercing eyes seemed to see straight through the young woman. "The court is a beast with many heads," Lady Margaret whispered, her voice low and sharp. "Trust is a currency more precious than gold, and far more dangerous to gamble. Guard your secrets well, Anne." Anne nodded, tightening her grip on the dagger hidden beneath her skirts. The words echoed in her mind, a caution that settled uneasily over her. As the afternoon waned, the courtyard outside buzzed with activity. Servants hurried past, their voices mingling with the clatter of horses and the soft murmur of conversation. It was in this throng that Anne first felt the shadow of Lord Edmund Grey. Tall and imposing, with cold grey eyes that seemed to cut through the crowd, he moved with the assurance of a man who believed himself destined for power. Anne watched him carefully, sensing the danger he represented not just to the Queen, but to the fragile order of the court itself. The dagger, once a mere secret burden, now felt like the fulcrum on which the fate of the realm might turn. That night, as Anne lay in her austere chamber, the flicker of candlelight casting long shadows on the walls, she contemplated the path ahead. The dagger was hidden, but the threat it symbolized was ever present. Within these walls, beneath the grandeur and ceremony, a deadly game was unfolding, and Anne Marwood was caught in its midst. Her youthful inexperience warred with a fierce determination. To serve the Queen was to serve the realm. To protect the realm was to face the impossible. The dagger was a silent promise, a secret that could topple kings or save them. As the palace settled into uneasy quiet, Anne's thoughts raced. Whom could she trust? What dangers lurked behind every curtsy and smile? The court was a labyrinth of intrigue, and every step she took might lead her closer to peril or to power. The night deepened, and the distant hoot of an owl echoed through the gardens. Anne closed her eyes, steeling herself for the days to come. The dagger lay hidden, but the blade of fate was already drawn. The Tudor court was a labyrinth of polished smiles and whispered secrets, a place where every glance could conceal a dagger and every word mask a threat. Anne Marwood had arrived only recently, yet already the weight of the court's gaze settled upon her like a heavy cloak. She moved with deliberate grace, her dark hair pulled back tightly to reveal a face that betrayed little of the turmoil within. But beneath the calm exterior, her heart beat a frantic rhythm, each pulse a reminder of the deadly secret she carried hidden beneath her gown. The dagger meant for Queen Elizabeth herself. The great gallery where Anne now lingered was alive with the soft murmur of voices and the gentle clinking of goblets. Tapestries hung thick on ancient stone walls, their rich colors muted in the flickering candlelight. Shadows danced and merged as courtiers passed, their conversations a delicate web of alliances, rivalries, and barely concealed ambitions. Anne observed them all with keen eyes, the raised brow of a noblewoman as she regarded a rival, the quick, darting glance exchanged between two men in dark doublets. Each gesture, each subtle inflection, was a piece of the intricate puzzle she was only beginning to understand. It was here, in the midst of this elegant danger, that Anne first met Lady Margaret Seymour. The older woman approached with a measured step, silver-streaked hair framing a face lined with years of courtly experience. Her piercing eyes held a sharpness that could cut through pretense, yet there was a gentleness in her tone when she spoke to Anne. "You watch well, Lady Marwood," Lady Margaret said quietly, her voice just above a whisper. "The court is no place for the faint of heart. Every smile you see is a mask, and every friendship a gamble." Anne nodded, swallowing the lump rising in her throat. "I am learning, my lady. But the more I see, the more I fear I do not know enough." Lady Margaret's eyes softened slightly. "None of us ever do. But you have a steadiness about you that will serve you well. Remember, discretion is your greatest ally. Speak little, observe much, and trust cautiously." The advice was simple yet profound, and Anne felt a flicker of hope. Here was someone who might help her bear the unbearable weight of her secret. Still, the dagger she concealed pressed cold against her ribs, a constant, chilling reminder of the peril that shadowed every step. As days passed, Anne's senses sharpened. At courtly banquets, beneath the gilded chandeliers and amid the scent of spiced wine and burning tallow, she witnessed the subtle barbs exchanged beneath polite laughter. Lady Cecily Howard's sharp tongue and calculating eyes marked her as a dangerous adversary, while whispers of foreign emissaries and secret meetings hinted at larger forces at play. Anne's friendship with Lady Margaret deepened, the older woman guiding her through the treacheries of Tudor politics with a steady hand. Together, they navigated the delicate dance of favors and warnings, of alliances forged in shadows. Yet Anne's vigilance never wavered. Each night, in the solitude of her chamber, she would touch the hidden dagger beneath her gown, feeling the cold steel steady her trembling resolve. "This court," Lady Margaret once said, "is a crown of thorns. To wear it is to bleed unseen." Anne understood that more keenly than ever. Her loyalty to the Queen was fierce, but the path ahead was fraught with danger. She would need all her cunning and courage if she was to survive the whispers in the halls and protect the Queen from the blade that threatened to change history. As the candle flames guttered low and the court settled into uneasy silence, Anne's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock at her door. A messenger, breathless and wide-eyed, handed her a folded note, a warning cloaked in careful script. The game had begun in earnest, and Anne Marwood, with the dagger hidden close, was at its center. With a determined breath, she read the words that would shape the days to come, the shadows of intrigue lengthening around her like a gathering storm. The heavy wooden doors of the great hall swung open with a measured creak as Anne Marwood stepped into the courtyard, bathed in the waning light of the afternoon sun. Her heart fluttered with a mixture of resolve and trepidation. Here, within the stone walls of Elizabeth's court, every glance bore the weight of unspoken intentions, and every whispered word could become a weapon. Yet, Anne's purpose was clear: to find an ally who could help her guard the secret. She bore the dagger hidden beneath her gown, a silent sentinel against the storm gathering within the court. She moved quietly, her dark hair tied back tightly, eyes scanning the figures that dotted the courtyard. The distant clang of swords being sharpened mingled with the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Then, near the marble fountain at the centre, she spotted him, Sir Thomas Wycliffe. Broad-shouldered and clad in the polished armour of the Queen's Guard, he seemed a steadfast island amid the shifting tides of courtly intrigue. His rough hands rested casually on the hilt of his sword, and his serious gaze swept the courtyard with a vigilance born of duty. Anne's footsteps faltered as she approached, the weight of her secret dagger a constant reminder of the danger lurking just beneath the surface. "Sir Thomas," she began, voice barely above a whisper, "may I have a moment?" He turned, surprise flickering in his eyes before settling into a guarded curiosity. "Lady Anne, of course. What troubles you in these uncertain times?" Their conversation was cautious, each word weighed carefully. Anne spoke of her unwavering loyalty to the Queen, hinting at the threats she sensed but dared not name. Sir Thomas listened intently, his expression hardening with resolve. "The court is a labyrinth of shadows," he said quietly, "but loyalty like yours is a beacon. If there is danger, we must face it together." A fragile trust began to take root, an alliance forged in the shared understanding of peril and purpose. Yet even as they spoke, the shadow of another presence loomed: Lord Edmund Grey. From a darkened gallery overlooking the courtyard, his cold grey eyes watched the exchange with a calculating gaze. His voice, low and measured, carried through to Anne's ears as he spoke to a select group of nobles. "Power is not given, it is taken," he murmured, each word a sharpened blade aimed at the heart of the realm. The flicker of candlelight cast eerie shadows across his angular face, embodying the threat that hung over the court like a gathering storm. Anne felt a chill, the weight of the dagger beneath her sleeve suddenly much heavier. Later, as evening draped its velvet cloak over the court, Anne found herself once again beside the marble fountain. The scent of jasmine drifted on the cool air, mingling with the soft murmur of distant voices. Sir Thomas's presence was a steady comfort in a world where trust was scarce. "You carry a great burden, Lady Anne," he said softly, "but you do not have to bear it alone." She met his gaze, the cautious hope in her heart flickering brighter. "Together," she whispered, "we can protect her." Yet the night was never truly still. As she retreated to her chambers, the chapel bell tolled in solemn cadence, each peal echoing the fragility of the peace they sought to defend. Fingers trembling slightly, Anne brushed the hidden dagger beneath her sleeve. It was more than steel, it was a symbol of sacrifice, courage, and the perilous balance of power that defined the Tudor court. And as the shadows lengthened, Anne knew that the fateful encounter with Sir Thomas had set in motion a chain of events that would test every ounce of her resolve. The Queen's safety, the realm's survival, and Anne's very life now hung in delicate balance, poised on the edge of a blade. The court whispered its secrets, and Anne listened, ready to act, but the question remained: whom could she truly trust? The corridors of Whitehall were no strangers to whispers, but tonight they seemed to carry a more dangerous weight. Anne Marwood moved with deliberate caution, her footsteps muffled against the cold flagstones as she approached the shadowed alcove near the east wing. The flickering torchlight cast long, wavering shadows, and the distant murmur of voices pulled her closer, the words muffled yet urgent. She pressed herself against the rough stone, breath shallow, ears straining to catch fragments of the conversation within. The Queen's grip weakens with every trusted friend turned adversary, a low voice murmured, thick with venom. "Grey's hour approaches, soon the crown will fall where it belongs." Anna's heart quickened. The name Grey was spoken with reverence and fear, a chilling reminder of the man whose ambition threatened to unravel the very fabric of the realm. Lord Edmund Grey, once a trusted advisor, now a shadow stalking the corridors of power with a hidden blade. Retreating silently, Anne's mind raced. The dagger she guarded was not merely a weapon, but a symbol of the deadly stakes. It was meant for the Queen, a token of the treachery festering beneath the polished veneer of court life. Every whispered plot, every secret meeting, tightened the noose around Elizabeth's reign. Seeking counsel, Anne found Lady Margaret Seymour in the Queen's private chambers, the older woman's silver-streaked hair gleaming softly in the candlelight. Margaret's eyes, sharp and unyielding, met Anne's with an intensity born from years navigating the treacherous tides of Tudor politics. "You tread a perilous path, child," Margaret said quietly. "Lord Grey's web spreads wider than you know. Foreign powers send their shadows, each eager to grasp the crown through the chaos he stirs. Trust is scarce, and betrayal waits in every corner." Anne nodded, the weight of her secret dagger heavier than ever. "I will not let the Queen fall," she vowed, voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. Outside, Sir Thomas Wycliffe hunned his blade beneath a slate-grey sky, the rhythmic clang of steel ringing through the courtyard. His broad shoulders tensed with each precise strike, a physical manifestation of the resolve burning within. Anne watched from a distance, comforted by the knowledge that his loyalty was a shield against the encroaching darkness. As the great hall filled with the glittering elite for a sumptuous banquet, Anne sensed the undercurrents swirling beneath the polite smiles and clinking goblets. Foreign ambassadors exchanged veiled threats, noble factions jockeyed for advantage, and the dagger's shadow loomed unseen but palpable. The delicate dance of diplomacy masked the deadly game poised to erupt. Amidst the reverie, Anne's thoughts remained focused. The dagger was more than a blade. It was a fulcrum upon which the fate of the realm balanced. Each secret uncovered deepened the peril, yet steeled her courage. In the shadows of ambition, she would stand vigilant, a silent guardian against the blade destined to change history. The night closed around Whitehall like a tightening shroud. Anne knew the path ahead would demand every ounce of her cunning and bravery. The court was a battlefield where loyalty and betrayal wore the same mask, and she, a young lady in waiting, was caught at the heart of a deadly storm. Yet in her hands lay the fragile hope of a crown's survival, a hope she would protect at all costs. And as the candles guttered low, Anne's resolve burned brighter than ever, a beacon against the encroaching dark. The heavy oaken doors of the Queen's private swung open with a muted creak, admitting Anne Marwood into a sanctum few ladies in waiting ever glimpsed. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax and lavender, mingling with the faint musk of aged tapestries that adorned the walls. Candles flickered in ornate sconces, casting dancing shadows across the richly embroidered hangings and the gilded frame of a portrait of Elizabeth's father, Henry V. At the heart of the room stood the Queen herself, a figure of regal command and serene authority. Her fiery red hair was swept high and adorned with pearls and jewels that caught the candlelight like captured stars, and her sharp eyes, the color of burnished topaz, seemed to pierce through any pretense. Anne's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped forward with careful grace, the weight of the dagger hidden beneath her bodice a silent companion to her every breath. She knelt, head bowed, feeling the coolness of the marble floor seep through the thin soles of her shoes. Elizabeth's voice, low and measured, broke the silence. "Anne Marwood," she said, "you have served well in your brief time here. Your loyalty is noted, and in these dangerous days, such loyalty is the crown's finest jewel." Anne dared to lift her eyes, catching a glimmer of something softer beneath the Queen's steely gaze, a moment of trust, a spark of recognition. It was a gift and a burden, binding her ever closer to the perilous fate of the realm. As the audience ended, Anne was escorted back through the corridors to the company of Lady Margaret Seymour, whose silver-streaked hair and piercing eyes bespoke decades of service and survival within the Tudor court's treacherous currents. In the shadowed alcove of the great hall, Margaret's voice dropped to a whispered counsel. "Trust is a luxury, Anne," she warned, her gaze steady and grave. "Many wear smiles like masks, and daggers are often hidden beneath silks. The Queen's confidence is precious, but you must guard your own heart from folly." Anne nodded, the weight of Margaret's words settling like a stone in her chest. The distant clatter of goblets and murmured conversations provided a constant reminder that the court was a living thing, ever swirling with secrets and schemes. Later, walking alone through the labyrinthine palace corridors, Anne's footsteps echoed softly against the stone walls. The tapestry of courtly life unfolded around her, laughter and music spilling from distant chambers, yet beneath the gaiety lurked a shadow she could not shake. The dagger she bore, the symbol of a deadly conspiracy, pressed against her side, a constant reminder of the stakes she faced. In the quiet of the Queen's private garden, Anne paused to watch Elizabeth from a distance. The Queen's commanding figure was framed by blooming roses, their delicate petals trembling in the gentle breeze. The rustle of leaves whispered secrets only the night understood. In that fleeting moment of peace, Anne's resolve crystallized. Her youthful fears gave way to a fierce determination to protect the woman who carried the fate of England upon her shoulders. Yet as she turned back toward the palace, the shadows lengthened, and the dangers of the court loomed ever larger. The Queen's confidence was a beacon, but Anne knew the path ahead would demand every ounce of courage and cunning she possessed. The fragile balance of trust and suspicion hung over her like a blade, and the question remained: whom could she truly rely upon in a world where alliances shifted with the flicker of candlelight? With a steadying breath, Anne pressed forward, the dagger close to her heart and the Queen's words echoing in her mind. The game was far from over, and she was no longer merely a watcher, but a player in the deadly dance of power and betrayal. The corridors of the Tudor court seemed to pulse with whispered secrets and veiled glances. Each step Anne Marwood took weighted with the knowledge of dangers lurking beneath the polished veneer of courtly grace. On this day, the air was thick with the scent of beeswax and rosewater, mingling with the faint rustle of silk and the soft murmur of voices that carried like a low tide through the vast halls. Anne had learned to move within this world with careful precision, but today a new threat emerged in the form of Lady Cecily Howard, a woman whose smile was as sharp as the blade Anne concealed beneath her skirts. Lady Cecily's reputation for cunning and ambition was well known, and her alignment with Lord Edmund Grey's faction made her a dangerous adversary. Anne had noticed the way her eyes lingered a little too long on her, the subtle tilt of her head as if measuring Anne's every move. It was during the morning's gathering in the gallery, where tapestries depicted the gloried reign of Elizabeth's predecessors, that Lady Cecily chose to weave her insinuations. Anne stood near a cluster of courtiers, her gaze steady but inwardly alert. Lady Cecily approached with a grace that belied the venom beneath her words. "Dear ladies," she began, voice lilting like a song, "one must always be cautious of those who carry secrets too heavy for their years. It is a perilous thing to hold such burdens close to the heart, especially within these walls." Her eyes flicked toward Anne, a subtle challenge cloaked in civility. A hush settled over the group as Lady Cecily's words hung in the air, a delicate web of accusation spun with the finesse only a practiced courtier could command. Anne's heart quickened, but her face betrayed no hint of the storm within. She offered a measured smile, a shield forged from composure and quick wit. "Secrets, Lady Cecily, are often the currency of survival in our realm," Anne replied softly, her voice steady. "Yet it is trust and loyalty that prove the truest strength." The courtiers exchanged glances, the tension palpable. Lady Cecily's smile faltered for a fraction of a heartbeat before she masked it with a nod. Anne's discreet deflection had bought her time, but the threat was undeniable. The dagger she bore, a silent testament to the dangers encircling the Queen, pressed against the confines of her bodice, a constant reminder of the stakes. Later, seeking solace and clarity, Anne slipped away to the Queen's private garden, a sanctuary where the air was cool and fragrant with blooming roses. The soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a lark offered a brief reprieve as she leaned against the ancient stone wall, closing her eyes to steady her racing thoughts. The weight of the court's watchful eyes bore down, but within her, a fierce determination kindled anew. She would not falter. That evening, Anne found herself in the company of Lady Margaret Seymour, whose silver-streaked hair and piercing gaze bespoke years of navigating the treacherous tides of Tudor politics. Within the quiet intimacy of Margaret's chamber, Anne shared the day's encounter, her voice tinged with the unease beneath her practiced calm. "Lady Cecily's words are not without purpose," Margaret intoned, her tone both cautionary and consoling. "You must tread carefully, Anne. Every gesture, every glance is scrutinized. Yet remember, discretion and patience are your greatest allies. The court is a chessboard, and you must learn to anticipate your opponent's moves." Anne nodded, absorbing the wisdom. Her youthful inexperience was a liability, but with guidance and her own keen intuition, she could navigate these veiled threats. The path ahead was fraught with peril, yet the flame of loyalty to the Queen and the realm burned bright within her. Days later, during a formal gathering in the Great Hall, the tension between Anne and Lady Cecily reached a subtle crescendo. The hall was adorned with rich tapestries and flickering candlelight that cast elongated shadows upon the marble floor. Courtiers gathered in clusters, their voices a low hum beneath the strains of a lute. Lady Cecily approached Anne with a question loaded with implication, her eyes gleaming with the promise of confrontation. "Lady Marwood, one wonders how you manage your duties with such secrecy. Is there not a burden in carrying so many hidden things?" Anne met her gaze squarely, her lips curving into a composed smile. "Secrets are indeed heavy, Lady Cecily, but they are carried by many here. It is the trust we place in one another that lightens the load." Her words were a careful dance, deflecting suspicion while affirming her loyalty. The courtiers nearby exchanged subtle looks, sensing the unspoken duel of wits. Lady Cecily's smile was polite, but edged with frustration. Anne's poise had diffused the moment, yet the undercurrent of danger remained. That night, as Anne lay in her chamber, the weight of the day's encounters pressed upon her. The dagger's presence was a constant reminder that the court was a place where shadows moved with deadly intent. Yet within her stirred a resolve forged by fear, loyalty, and the fierce determination to protect the Queen at all costs. The game of intrigue was only beginning, and Anne Marwood was learning that, in the Tudor court, survival depended not only on strength, but on the deftness of one's mind and the courage to face veiled threats head-on. As the flicker of candlelight danced across her chamber walls, Anne whispered to herself, "I will not be undone." The night embraced her words, carrying them into the uncertain dawn that awaited.